how do we identify it and what can we do as parents? Well, to find out the answers, hopefully, we're going to have a chat with mental health practitioner and researcher Maizan Dianati. Good morning, Maizan. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
So this is unfortunately a bit of a difficult topic to handle, especially for us parents. So first of all, can you explain a little bit about what aggressive behavior is from a psychological standpoint?
Okay, so aggression term refers to a series of behavior that can result to both psychological and physical harms to yourself, to others, and also to objects in your surroundings.
So it has to be repeated, then it's not like an isolated incident.
That's right.
I mean, if this happens to like an adults, because we've seen through, many of situations throughout our life, but when this happened to especially children, I mean, of course, preteens and teenagers, they live longer, but like children having this aggressive behavior, what would be the factor? Is it because they have more access now to watch movies, TV shows, and contents and whatnot? What would be that factor they become more aggressive now?
Yeah, environmental factors like that, being exposed in aggressive contents, and then being exposed maybe in domestic violence at home. Being rewarded for the tantrum behaviors that they do would contribute to that. But other than that, biological factors such as hormonal imbalance and also psychological factors such as lack of empathy, lack of emotional regulations, and also some psychological conditions such as depression, narcissistic personality disorder, ADHD, autism would contribute to that, because these people have some kind of lack in their ability to be able to empathize generally in their social skills.
Yeah, so a lot of those are psychological or medical conditions, but you mentioned something that kind of caught my attention, rewarding tantrums. I mean, we as parents don't feel like we reward tantrums. So how do you mean? Like, can you give us an example?
Sometimes it's unintentional. So for example, when a child cry in the mall or like in the toy store,
they want something.
Because they want something, and then so they will get quiet, so it won't be embarrassing for other people.
So we're giving into their wants just to kind of stop them from behaving. But what we're indirecally doing is we're giving them what they want, so they figure, hey, I got a toy last time I did this, so I can just do this again.
I do not. But what you were also mentioning something that's important, and that is, domestic, right? So this is happening at home, and of course, at home is children and the parents. So if they got lack of attention from the parents or too much attention from the parents, this could be one of the factors too.
Yeah, too much attention can result in those rewarding behaviors.
Correct.
But lack of attention means, especially if it's relating to physical abuse, emotional isolation, they would think that behaviors are normal, it become normalized, and they would repeat or imitate those behaviors towards others.
Yeah, because I see a lot of children, I don't know about you, Paul, but I see a lot of children being spoiled so much by the parents, right? They become little kings and princesses and little queens at home, and then when they go outside of their houses, they become just like that. They become so aggressive with others because they thought, well,
they act like they're at the top of the food chain because that's how it is at home.
Right. So is that like one of the factors too, like you were saying, getting more attention from the parents?
Because self-esteem supposed to be on a normal level. If it's too high, if parents are too rewarding, complimenting for every little thing, that's actually not really good enough to compliment. Like, they would be entitled, that they think that they are better than everyone else, and in social situations they would try to dominate the environment. So that's why aggressive behaviors would kick in.
And I've heard that even something small, like let's say they finish their dinner, and then you're like, what an amazing job, you finished your dinner, you're the best. That's actually not good, because it can be counterproductive, because they think every little thing, like just finishing a meal, would be like,
when it's the norm, right? You have to finish your food.
You're supposed to finish your dinner, right? So let's talk a little bit about how do we know where that happy medium is. Caroline mentioned like too much attention is no good. Like obviously under attentive is bad.
Yeah.
So how do we know as parents that we're finding like the right balance here, and what sort of signs are we looking for in our kids before it reaches aggressive behavior? Obviously we don't want that to happen.
Again, like maybe look at the standard of rules that you want to fulfill from the children. So of course parents would have their own standard, like how relating to the behavior of the children at home, at the public space, at school. So if they really meet that standard, give them compliments. But if they're not, instead of complimenting, maybe focus on the encouragement. So not really punishment, which would result in the lack of attention. Children would feel like they are isolated from the parents, especially if it's relating to like passive-aggressive type of punishment. So focus on encouragement, but not really complimenting the things that should not be complimented.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Especially, I think...
We want to sometimes compliment, like, wow, we're so happy, we just send them a compliment. But my wife reminds me all the time, like, you don't have to compliment her on every little thing she does.
Right. Well, I mean, nowadays, if you see, I mean, there's no school for parents, right? And then, of course, you would seek on everywhere to get from books or internet and whatnot. And nowadays, there's a lot of like parenting 101 says that you cannot say no to your children. You cannot be mad at your children. You cannot, you know, the things that our parents did to us, like put us in the corner, having a timeout, or even maybe shouting at us if we're, you know, go over the line and whatnot. So what are we supposed to do as parents? Because we don't want our kids, like Paul said before, to be having this kind of behavior.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, positive parenting is good, but it doesn't mean that children should have an access to everything. So they should know about, like, social norms, like how to empathize to others, how to not do something that would hurt others. So even though it's bad for parents to punish the kid, but in the end, they need to learn about these certain rules that happen in their environment, because in the end, having a good understanding about this would help them to adjust themselves better once they go to school, once they go to an environment where there is only minimal help from their parents.
Of course, right, because they have to be ready for the world. They're not going to be, you know, stuck at their home all the time. Like, you can give sort of a punishment, but in a positive way. Turn the negative into a positive way.
Not all of this stuff is visible to us as parents. We only spend half the day with our kids. Most of the kids are in school now these days. And a lot of times this behavior, we report on it all the time. It's happening outside of their homes where the parents aren't monitoring their behavior. So there must be some early detection signs for us to see at home in order for us to know or get an idea of what's happening at school before it turns violent and they get reported to the principal's office and we get a phone call. What are some of the things that we need to look out for at home to give us kind of clues that perhaps our kids may be misbehaving or displaying aggressive behavior at school?
Okay, actually, although aggression is quite normal for little children too, because they still have problems to articulate their emotions.
Yes, it's frustration, right? They cannot express themselves and it comes out as aggression.
But it depends on the frequency and in the intensity. So if they always respond to their angers by throwing tantrum, like physically abuse someone, verbally saying bad words, or breaking something all the time, it can be the indications of aggression. And then other than that, like from a social perspective, like parents can see whether this kid is all right whenever they are in, whenever he or she is interacting with others, especially the peers or siblings. So if others tend to isolate themselves from this person, it can be another indication that maybe people don't like this kid.
For some reason. There has to be a reason, right? Because kids are normally cool with each other. I asked, and how young can kids start displaying this sort of behavior?
Very young. So as what I've mentioned before, like little kids from 2 years old until like
toddlers.
Toddlers, they would tend to throw a lot lot of tantrum, but it is the critical period as well for parents.
So the reason I ask is because I have a 3-year-old that beats me up all the time. And it's because I know, because he's a little bit late in developing his speech, and we understand it's because sometimes we don't understand
he's frustrated,
what he's trying to say, and he doesn't have the words to say it, so then he'll pinch me or he'll squeeze me. How worried should I be that this could translate into aggressive behavior, or logically, should it start to disappear once he starts learning how to speak?
Logically, yes, because I think for kids with developmental problems, the problem of aggression or tantrums is really relating to that, because they don't know, maybe like inside their mind, they want to tell something.
Yeah, you don't understand me.
So that's why like he does that. But in the end, it's also like a critical time for parents to help them realize about another coping mechanism that exists. For example, instead of pinching or hitting, maybe try to alternate it by putting them in a timeout, so helping them to release their emotion first before asking for something, or if it's like for the older kid, maybe trying to give them like a notebook, so whenever
like journaling,
so whenever they have like frustration, they can write it first instead of turning it into action.
And I have one more follow-up question. So then theoretically, if our kid throws a toddler, my toddler's throwing a fit in the mall for some reason, should we just let them just vent it out and then wait for them to calm down?
Yeah.
As opposed to just giving into it right away?
Yeah, so
that's my weakness.
So instead of just telling them, no, you cannot do that, or instead of like doing something that would be like true grand gesture, like lifting them up, something like that. So maybe better to put them in a safer space. So let them vent out their emotion first. As long as they are not breaking something, they are not hurting themselves, they are not hurting others. So let them release the emotions before going into like conversation.
I did that too once. What happened? I was just sitting next to him until he's done, because he's like, and then at the end he's like, "Mommy, can I get the toy?" I'm like, "Nope, not today."
No.
After what you did for like 20 minutes, people are looking at me. Not today, my darling. But you know, we were talking, before. This is how to prevent our children to have this kind of behavior. Let's say for a parent to already have. We're not talking about toddlers or children. Maybe like
principal's already called.
Exactly. And sometimes I think parents are always, as a parent, we always have that first notion of denial, right? I'm like, are you sure? Because like at home, they're like good boys and good girls.
No
like
way.
they would never do that, right? So how first do we deal when our children have this kind of behavior, and how do we also deal with our children that we know that has this behavior?
Yeah, because anger is one of the outlet of expressing emotion. So there must have been reasons why this teenager does it, did it. So as a parent, I think like the first thing that parents can do, you can just have a discussion with the children. So tell them that you are willing to listen, so you are willing to understand. So first let them talk about the reasons, but after this discussion, again, maybe share your view that this is not a right thing to do. So maybe it's better if you're doing this and this, because sometimes although they are older, but they are still a bit clueless in terms of finding the right way to handle the situations, especially maybe if the friends like it, like if they are doing like the bullying behavior. So
especially if they're in a group, right?
So that's why, like as a parent, maybe tell them about the like social norm that should be done, and then also like, although yes, you can be angry, but there are certain ways that you can do to express this emotion. So, and this thing is not one of those.
Right. So first you have to listen first. So you have to take your time to kind of like have a breather first, let them talk, so then they can pour their hearts out, and then you'll discuss it after that, and the punishment too.
Right.
I mean, or whatever circumstances that you chose.
Right, punishment. So, I have friends who have kids who are already teenagers, and teenagers don't always want to talk to their parents, especially when, no matter how cool you try to be, but it's always like, oh, I'd rather talk to somebody else. So what would be an alternate way to deal with this if your kid doesn't want to talk to you? Is there a guidance counselor, or what would be the next step?
Yeah, like if it's happening at school, some school, I think like most of the schools right now already have the school counselor, so you can ask the children whether they would be okay to talk to the school counselor. But if they prefer to talk to someone that they don't know or not relating to their social life at school, so going into psychological consultation would help, because
like a child psychologist, right? Okay.
Because during the consultations, like a psychologist would help the children to address their emotions, the triggers of the emotions, and how to cope well with that emotion. And if turned out like the psychologist sees some kind of pattern of what's called like deeper psychological condition, such as maybe ADHD or a bit sense of autism, maybe parents can have more discussion about the professional itself on how to deal with this specific children.
And get a treatment.
Because we may not know it ourselves,
Yes.
and as well, apart from just being able to find it easier to talk to a stranger as well, they might be able to see it just from a different perspective. We as parents sometimes are so blind to these things because we're seeing things using emotion as well.
But Maizan, just a quick question. We've seen this situation, especially that's happening with children, youths, youngsters. It becomes the norm because, especially like Paul and myself, we always kind of like bringing this kind of news. I mean, when I was younger, I don't see it as much. It seems like parents those days has their foot on the ground more.
Tough love.
Exactly. As of right now, what's happening? Like through your research, do you have any data that you can share with us?
It can be that, again, the too much positive encouragement would contribute to that. But other than this thing, as we all know, like right now, social media is expanding a lot.
Right. So that plays a huge part.
Yeah, such as the clip that we saw before when people, teenagers doing prank,
what is it? They're trying to go viral, is it?
Yeah, they try it because what's called controversial content would have more likes. Although it can be positive and negative, compared to the mediocre content. So due to get validations from others, due to get like more popularity, they would feel that they are rewarded when they are doing this behavior, so they repeat these behaviors again and again.
Yeah.
That's why my kids aren't on social media for a while.
This is what the world we're living in right now.
Exactly. Maizan, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
We obviously need to put more of a spotlight on this matter because you said we're reporting on these incidents way too much, and this needs to be addressed.
Right.
So,
thank you so much
appreciate
for
you
being here,
dropping by.
Maizan.
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's always very tough, subjects and topics that when we have Maizan in the studio.
Why is it always me and you? Oh, because we're talking about kids, right? Okay.
Very much needed, though. All right, so guys, we're going to take a break right now, but when we return, we have more updates from around the world. So keep it locked right here on the C Morning Show, only on C Today. We'll be right back.